Good noon everybody. I am Sudhan Sharma. Today we will be talking about the introductory aspects of database management systems. Actually, before starting the session, I would like to precise you that what we are going to discuss in this session. There is a concept of the data, and there is something which is known as information. And information nothing but a processed data. And when enormous amount of information is available, there is a requirement that how to club up the information into different sets according to the requirement. So there is a requirement that how that information should be segregated, and in order to do the task, several things were proposed, and two main of them were file-based systems and the database systems. Actually, mere clubbing of the data does not fulfill the purpose, because there might be a requirement that some people want to see some part of the data, and some other group of person might want to have a glance of other part of data. Say you are having a data set of roll number, name, marks, address, and some people, a group of person might be interested in having a glance over roll number and marks, and other might be having interested in having a glance over roll number, name and address. So at that very instance of time, the same set of data, that is a complete data set, will be exposed to both type of persons, and the desired group, that the required information may not be available at the desired time to that particular group. So in order to handle this type of issues, the concept of database management systems was incorporated. Actually, in a file-based system, the problem was that we are going to mix up the access control, that is the logic, along with the data part, and this mixing of logic with the data creates a lot of problem. So we need to separate the two concepts, that is your logic part and the data part, and this separation was achieved through three-level architecture, which is a basic architecture for database management system. So let's start with the concept about the slides. Let's have a glance at the slide. That in fact, why there was a need of file-based system, and there are some situations in which there is the file-based system is much better than the database system. The environments where the security is not a issue, where there is no problem, where the number of users who are going to use the information is small, at that very instance of time, the file-based system is quite better than the database system, because in the database management system, the cost of application is quite high. So in that situation where security is not a problem, where the group of users is quite small, then that very situation of time, the file-based system is quite important and quite simple to implement. But because of the intermingling of the access technology, because of the intermingling of the logic and the data available, some problems arise, and those problems are in fact the combination of the access method and the logic. That means, say you are going to change the access method from the sequential to direct or index sequential, then the change of this access method will definitely affect the logic part, and this will create a problem. Secondly, there is no data independence. That is the same thing which I had already described, that if there are two set of persons, two group of persons want to refer different type of data, then hello. Hello. Hello, Chennai.
Hello?
Yes, Chennai.
Hello?
Yeah, hello. Please speak.
Sir, I would like to ask about serial schedules and serializable schedules.
Serial schedules and serializable schedule. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Just listen to the scene.
Can I watch it through the TV, sir?
No, you just listen to the same. I am just going to explain the same in a different manner. Okay. So I am continuing. There is a request about the concept of the serial schedule and the serializable schedule. It is a very important concept related to the concurrency management. So instead of dealing with the details of the file-based system, firstly identify the database management system, what is database, and then we will go about the serial schedule and the serializable schedule. Now actually, database is nothing but a central pool of data that can be shared by the user. This central pool tendency was not available with the file-based system, and this shared technology, this shared attitude is not available with the file-based system. Because of this shared tendency, same data can be replicated according to the requirement of the different group of users. Now at the same same time, the basic database management system is going to have some properties, and these properties are in fact access control, concurrency management, backup and recovery, integrity constraints, and the external views. Now these are the 5 core properties, 5 basic properties around which every concept of database management system revolves. So far as the question arrives, it is the question from the concurrency management. The concept is that when more than one person is trying, the concept of concurrency, because the database is central pool of data that can be shared by the user, and when sharing comes, that means more than one person is trying to access the data. When more than one person is trying to access the data, then there is a possibility that 2 transactions, a transaction is a block in which a person can read or write or update the data. That means within that transaction, if some other transaction arrives, then there might be a problem because of the violation of the ACID property, that is atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. And because of that violation, there might be some problem. So actually, when more than one transactions are arriving to a processor, then they are to be scheduled, because processor can process one instruction at a time. So there are 2 types of schedule. One schedule is serial schedule, other schedule is serializable schedule. What is the difference in between serial schedule and serializable schedule? Let me cite you an example. Say you are, this is not available on the slide. Say, yeah, Nasik. Hello, Nasik.
Hello.
Yes, Nasik.
Hello.
Yes, Nasik.
Sir.
Yes.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
I had given the exam of data structure.
Okay.
CS62.
Okay.
But till now the result had not been declared. Can I know the reason?
You can forward your request to SRE and D, and they will reply about the reason. The result might be declared as soon as possible, but so far as the concerned exact reason is concerned, they may revert you back.
Okay, sir. Sir, is there any problem regarding not giving the practical exam?
I think
because of not attending the classes, I had not permitted for giving the practical exam, so I had only given the theory.
One thing I would like to say that this is a session for introduction to database management system, and so far as this is not a part for administrative handlings, so it's better not to discuss this type of problems in this session. I am going to answer the question from Chennai, that is serial schedule and serializable schedule. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, so say some people are trying to submit the telephone bills. They go to telephone exchange, and they are arriving one by one to the counter. Say the counter is not open. Then what happened? What happens that they will create a queue, and people are adding continuously onto the queue. Now, as and when the counter opens, the people start submitting their bills. Now, meanwhile, some housewives, some ladies arrive to the telephone exchange for submission of bill. At the same time, some senior citizens also arrive for submission of the bills. At that very instance of time, what the person at the window who is taking the bill amount is doing, that he is creating 3 lines, one for normal persons, young people, one for senior citizens, and one for ladies. Now, what is happening at this instance of time? Still the person who is going to accept the bill is single only, but at this very instance of time, the queues which are to be processed are 3, and what the person will do, he plan a schedule that he will take 1 bill from the queue of senior citizen, 2 bills from a normal queue, normal person's queue, and normal young persons, and 1 bill from the queue of ladies. And in this way he will execute the task. Now, in the previous scene, when there was only single queue and person was having the bills continuously from the persons available in the queue, the schedule was nothing but a serial schedule. Now, the problem associated with the serial schedule is that some persons are supposed to supposed to go to their office. Now, what happened that at 9 o'clock they will plan that, oh, I am going to be late, so I should, it's better that I should quit the queue and I should go to my office. That is what is happening, that it is the problem of starvation. That means dying of, that means the transaction is finished without being executed by the processor. And this problem is nothing but starvation, that is lack of availability of processor in order to execute a transaction. But at the same time, when the processor is executing 3 processes, that means 3 transactions concurrently, now at that very instance of time, what is the problem? That some person might be waiting for the balance to be given by the person from counter, and that means there is a concept of resource sharing. In this concept, when person stand in the window is sharing or is processing the transaction from 3 separate queues, at that very instance of time the concept of resource sharing is there, and because of this resource sharing the problem of deadlock arrives. So there are 2 schedules, serial schedule and serializable schedule, and there are different problems, that is deadlock and starvation, and there are deadlock avoidance protocol which are available, wait and wound protocol, wait and die protocol, which can be used in order to avoid the deadlock. Now, in the scenario when transactions are available to you, you can identify how the transaction you can identify that these transactions will cause a deadlock or not. If there is a cyclic redundancy, if they form altogether a cyclic part, there is sharing of resources so that cycles are created. At that very instance of time, it is diagnosed that there might be a possibility of having deadlock. I hope it is clear that what is a serial schedule and what is a serializable schedule. It is a good question, because we should now come back to the database part, because as it is already communicated, it is a central pool of data that can be shared by the user, and there are different properties. One with the property is already discussed with you, that is the concurrency management. Concurrency, I had just described that when more than one transaction is arriving on the processor, and in order to handle those transactions, there are different schedules, serial schedule and serializable schedule, and that is all discussed. Now, the second the property associated with database management system is nothing but your access control. Because here we are supposed to discuss about different type of data structures like trees, B trees, B plus trees, and all that stuff. I would like to emphasize that this you might have discussed or might have studied in data structures, but it should be clear in your mind. It should be clear when to use B tree and when to use tree or when to use splay trees. Actually, when cache memory organization is there, you are supposed to use the splay tree part, and when secondary memory organization is there, B tree or B plus tree is quite important. You must go into the details of B tree where sequential access is there, and B plus tree when index sequential access is required. So these are some of the details. I don't want to go into details of those data structures, and these are the topics which are to be concerned when data is to be accessed, because in database we are centralizing the data, and this centralized data is to be available to the number of users. Then how these users are going to access the data with the availability that the data and logic are not mixed up. So access mechanism should be well specified, and this access, there are different access mechanisms incorporated with the help of different data structures which I just cited: B tree, B plus tree, splay trees, and all these things. These are data structure which we should discuss on the access control part. Now, there is a common problem that which is backup and recovery. Say a transaction is going on, and in between, if transaction is halted or some problem goes with the network, then what will happen to your transaction? Say you are withdrawing money from the ATM, and in between what happens, that light goes off or something goes wrong. Then the question will come into your mind whether the money which I was supposed to withdraw, the amount is updated into my database, or what had happened. So that means if in between some problem with the transaction goes, how to handle these type of problems is the topic which is related to backup and recovery. That means something goes wrong with the data, then how to handle the issues. At that very instance of time, the question arrives that redundancy is good or bad, because the concept of redundancy says that we should have multiple copies of the data. But normalization is a concept which is generally discussed in database management system, which says that we should reduce the redundancy. So the general question arises that whether we should have multiple copies of data or we should not have multiple copies of data. There is a limit that up to which we should have multiple copies of data. Although in distributed databases or in the scene when we want to recover the data, redundancy plays a vital role, because a number of copies are available. So from those number of copies, if something goes in between wrong, then by using proper methodology, say two-phase commit is one of the methodology which can be used to recover the data. So this is the topic which is to be discussed with your backup and recovery. And integrity constraints is another property which is very important, because database as it is, the definition is self-explanatory. Central pool of data that can be shared. That means in between the relations there is a sharing of data. And how to share the data? That means there has to be mapping from one table to, from one relation to another relation. And this mapping is incorporated with the help of keys. And there are various type of keys. We will describe in this session that what are the various type of keys available and how to identify those keys. Now, one thing more I would like to emphasize, that database management system is nothing but implementation of set theory, which is one of the component of discrete mathematics. And it is the logic behind that why we are teaching you the discrete mathematics, why we are teaching you the concepts like probability, statistics and graph theory, because these components of mathematics are in fact discrete in nature, and computer science is also a discrete science. So in order to have mapping in between the two sciences, that means in order to have because anything which can be programmed should have an algorithm. An algorithm is sequential implementation, that after this is the step to be executed, after this is the step to be executed. So any problem which can be transformed into the mathematical coordinate can be implemented in the computers. So you need a mathematical interface in between the computers and the real life problem, and this mathematical component in the field of computer science is provided by discrete mathematics. And so far as database management system is concerned, that discrete component is nothing but your set theory. So generally people talk about the concept of relational database management system. The statement starts with, abbreviation starts with relational database management system. Now what is a relation? What do we mean by relation? What is a function? What is a relation? I simply ask you a question. Can we have two names on a single roll number? If there are two sets, there is a domain, there is a codomain. The domain is representing roll number, the codomain is representing name of the student. Can we have a mapping that on a single roll number we could have two names, or on two roll numbers can we have one name? Yes, on two roll numbers we can have one name. Two persons might have same name but different roll numbers. But on a single roll number there is no chance of having two names. That means relation is a function in which one-to-many mapping is not allowed. So how will you identify which is a relation, which is a function? So let me cite you an example. Say square root. Now square root of a number, the answer will be, say I say square root 1. Now domain is having numbers, and codomain is having the answers, and the function of mapping is square root. Now square root of 1 is plus 1 and minus 1. That means there are two answers for square root of a single number. So square root is not a relation but it is a function. Okay. So relational database. So one should identify that relation is a term which arises from the set theory. So let's discuss in detail about the type of databases. Please show the slide. Actually, the databases are clearly categorized into two types: the deductive databases and the traditional databases. Deductive databases are in fact the databases related to artificial intelligence. These are the knowledge-based systems, knowledge-based databases. On the basis of the knowledge, you can infer something. You know something, you apply some rules to those knowings, and you infer something. Because and such type of databases are in fact deductive databases. But we generally talk about the traditional databases, which are your relational databases, network databases, hierarchical databases, and these are nothing for the databases for business data processing. So, will you please show the slide? So, in a database management system, the logic that I had already clarified you that there is the concept of data. Then data is to be modeled, and this modeled data will give you a database, and this database modeling is in fact can be done with the help of either ER diagrams. Yes, Chennai. Hello. Hello, Chennai.
Hello.
Yeah, Chennai.
Hello.
Yes, Chennai.
Hello, sir.
Yes, Chennai. Speak, please.
Hello. Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening.
I'm from Chennai.
Yeah.
I want one clarification in my assignment.
Yes.
Can I explain that one?
Hello.
Describe various strategies of concurrence management in this scenario of development
Will you please
and handling of a concurrent database environment.
Will you please repeat the question?
Hello.
Yeah. Will you please repeat the question? Please repeat the question.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
We would like to know the different concurrency management strategies, sir. They have said that if one system fails, you can access another, or you will have an access for another. So we would like to get a better idea on this.
Yeah. So,
Thank you, sir.
So different concurrency techniques are there. Okay. There's a concept of locks. There's a concept of optimistic scheduling. So these are some of the ways through which a concurrent environment can be handled. Actually, the violation of acid properties, that is atomicity, consistency, isolation and durability. These are the 4 properties, and violation of these properties in a concurrent environment will cause some problems. So, how to solve these problems? In order to handle these type of problems, 3 general mechanisms are available. First mechanism is two-phase locking. Second is time stamping, and third is optimistic scheduling. Now, what is two-phase locking? Actually, in a concurrent environment, what is the requirement? That the processor should handle as many transactions as possible. So, this is the general requirement in a concurrent scenario. But with the safe environment, that it should not be there that one transaction intervenes into another. So what was proposed, that a concept of locks was evolved, that say you are going to have a transaction in a bank and you are having a locker in your bank. So what you do, you go to the bank, you get your keys issued by having an entry into a register. You go to the locker room, you make a transaction, you want to take out something, whatever you want to do, you come back, you deposit the keys and go back. So that means the person who is issuing you the keys and who is accepting the key is in fact a lock manager. So in order to handle that type of concurrent transaction, a part of the processor was devoted as a lock manager. He was supposed to issue the locks, and there are different type of locks, shared log, exclusive log, and these are different type of locks which are available. I am not going into details of the types of locks. So once the lock is issued, you are authorized to do the transaction. So what two-phase locking says that when the locks are issued, start the transaction. But if any of the transaction is unlocked, then no other transaction should be entertained unless and until all the transactions are unlocked. That means when you are taking the transaction, every transaction should be logged, every transaction should start, and when any of the transaction is completed, that at that very instance of time, no other transaction should be taken afresh till all the transactions are completed. Now that means there is an entire phase of locking and there is another entire phase of unlocking, and that's why. Yes. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Sir, may I know what is meant by poly-instantiation
Hello.
in terms of security?
Yeah.
Sir, poly-instantiation.
Yeah. I will answer your question just after the answer from this Chennai. Okay.
Okay, fine.
So there are two phases. One is the locking phase and one is unlocking phase. So what is the problem lying over here is that you want that your processor should handle as many requests as possible, but what is happening, that processor is allotted a new job, that is the job of lock manager, and now the processor is now also busy in issuing the keys, issuing the locks, and receiving the locks along with the processing of the transaction. So this strategy was not appropriate as the number of transactions grows, so there was a problematic situation. So what was proposed, that instead of having a lock management, we should have a time stamping strategy, that as and when the transaction arrives to the processor, the date and time should be marked, that at this very instance of time the transaction arrives. So in this sense we could segregate that which transaction is new and which transaction is old. So again, the problem of issuing the log and collecting the log was resolved, but now the problem was simplified to simply mark the clock timing at the same time to monitor that which transaction is old and new, and then to process. But still the processor time is wasted in identifying the old transaction and identifying the new transaction at the same time, providing them the respective schedule, whichever is applicable as per the environment, the serial or the serializable schedule. So in order to again stop the wastage of time of the processor, people thought that it is not always necessary that people are going to transact with the database in a read or in a write mode. There are chances when people want to interact only in the read mode. Then there is no need of issuing the log. Say I would like to cite an example. Say on an internet, some people a book is available, a free copy of the book is available, and people want to read that book. Okay, so number of persons are reading that book. Now some mischievous student is there, some mischievous person is there. He download a copy of book, and he wants that the copy which is available on the net should be updated, should be modified such that the other students may understand a different thing. So the moment he planned to update the database, update the content of that book, at that very instance of time, you can incorporate one more thing, that is a validation. That means at that very instance of time, the authenticity of the person should be checked, that whether he is an authorized person. Then at that very instant of time he should enter the password, and if he is a perfect editor, okay, his suggestions or his comments are welcome, otherwise it should not be allowed. That means the transaction, if it is a read-only transaction, then there is no problem, and if the transaction is about the right part also, then the transaction should be validated, and this technique was nothing but a technique of optimistic scheduling. So these are the three ways through which the concurrent environment could handle the transactions in a when number of transactions are coming to a processor one by one. So what was the question from Nasik? Now Nasik cannot be connected. Okay, no problems. So actually the database is classified on the basis of the manipulation purpose, number of sites, number of users, and the models. So procedural, and on the basis of the manipulation, the database is classified on the as procedural and non-procedural. So on the basis of set theory also, we are having two type of things, the procedural query and the non-procedural query. The procedural part is taken care by the relational algebra, whereas the non-procedural part is taken care by the relational calculus. At the same time, on the basis of the purpose, the database is classified as a general purpose or the special purpose. Some databases are medical databases or bioinformatic databases, and whereas some databases are general purpose databases, and in which every information is available. So at the same time, on the basis of the number of sites, we are having distributed databases and the centralized databases. Likewise, the example of LIC is a centralized database. The moment you go to submit your premium, the person on the window asks you whether this premium, your policy belongs to this branch or to another branch. And if the policy belongs to another branch, he will ask you, yes, wait, I am going to establish the connection, and after that I will accept. That means the environment is centralized. There is a set of policies which are available for that particular branch, and a set of policies which does not belong to that particular branch. So the data of those policies is in fact available in a centralized database. So So the environment of centralized database system was quite expensive, because you are supposed to have a centralized server which should be of high processing speed and of very high configurations, and you are also having terminals which are available at the branch parts. So what it was realized, that why to waste the money in because you are having processors at the branch offices and you are having a very high quality server at the central environment. Secondly, the limitation of centralized database was that if you are going to start a new branch, then say there should be a direct connection in between the centralized server and the branch which is available, which is to be opened. So if something goes wrong with that connection, then you are not connected with the centralized environment. So at that very instant of time, people thought that when we are already having the processors, we are having low speed processors or normal processors at the branch offices, why don't we utilize their capability, their capacity in order to process the entire transaction? So different network topologies arrived into the picture, tree, mesh, circle, and all those topology arrived, such that the processors available in a normal computer can be utilized in order to process the data in a manner which could be processed as fast by a centralized environment, or even better than the centralized environment. And this solution was nothing but a distributed database, where multiple copies of same data is available on the number of nodes. And because of this is replication, that means this is redundancy. That means more than one amount of data is available on multiple number of nodes, and if one node fails out, then there is a possibility that you can access your data from another node. Likewise, a banking environment, the banking environment is distributed, airline environment is distributed, so a railway environment is also distributed. You are booking your tickets in Delhi and you are cancelling your tickets from Chennai, or whatever you are doing, the environment is nothing but a distributed part. So on the basis of number of models, we are having relational and all that, relational, network, and hierarchical databases. So one thing more I would like to cite here, that general relational database which we are using is Oracle 8i. So what we mean by Oracle, Oracle 8 and I. 8 is in fact the number represent the Boyce and Codd normal form which we are utilizing, and I represent the internet version. So the database environment in fact has got the basic three-level architecture which is defined over here. The external level, the conceptual level, and the internal level. And there are different languages which are supposed to be used to describe the respective level. Likewise, data storage definition language is there at the internal level. Data definition language is used to specify the conceptual level. Data manipulation language is used to specify the external level, and data control language is also used to control the transaction at the external level. So these are the four types of language which are used to represent the ANSI Spark 3-level architecture, which is the base model for the central pool of data that can be shared. And in between these layers, that is external, conceptual, internal, there is a sort of data independence. In between the external and the conceptual, we are having logical data independence, and between conceptual and internal, we are having physical data independence. The logical data independence says that there is no change in the external view when we incorporate any change in the conceptual view. At the same time, the physical data independence says that there is no change in the conceptual view when we incorporate any change in the internal level. So in order to draft a database, we need to understand about the basic terminologies. The first and the very important terminology is your schema. Schema is in fact a predicate part where the relation, that is, say you use the word teacher, teacher code, teacher name, and teacher qualification. Now teacher code, name, and qualification are in fact the attributes which are associated with the entity teacher. So in fact this description is known as the schema. And in ER diagram we use a schema to describe different languages. We use to describe different part of languages. Likewise, in DML, that is a data manipulation language, we are having different type of command, that is insert, delete, update, and select. These are some of the commands which are used to describe the data manipulation language part. And there are two types of queries, the procedural DML and the non-procedural DML. So at the same time, in the data definition language, the main purpose is to in fact define the data dictionary, that is the data about the data. We are going to specify about the metadata. That means how to create help, and the general commands which are used is Chennai.
Yes, sir. Good evening. Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Few minutes ago, you were talking about relation and function.
Hello.
Relation and function.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello. Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, sir. Sir, the difference between relation and between function.
Yes.
Function. We
Yes.
are talking about.
Yes.
Please continue. Please continue. It is
Continue
function
what?
and relation.
Continue what?
Function and relation, sir. Hello.
Yes. Should I repeat the concept of function and relation? So there is again a call from Chennai, and they might have some problem with the function and the relation. So let me restate. A number of calls are coming, so okay, let's restate the same. Relation is a function in which one-to-many mapping is not allowed. Okay. In a simple term, you can say that you are having domain and codomain, and there is a relation in between domain and codomain. The mapping in between these two could be many to one or one to many, or one to one or many to many. So the relation part says that one to many mapping is not allowed. That is, say you are having two sets, the roll number and the name of the student. Now on one roll number there is no possibility of having two names. Can we have two names? No. That means in order to have a proper mapping, in order to establish, but there are situations when we are having one to many mapping. Likewise the case of square root. Square root of a number is plus minus number. That means there are two images for the same number n when some operation is applied. So the operation applied is square root. So the operation square root is not a relation but is a function. Okay. So in simple terms you can simply understand the concept that one roll number, two names not allowed, two roll number, one name allowed. That means many to one allowed, one to many not allowed. This is a simple difference in between relation and function. Although there are different things which you might have studied in the discrete mathematics, say I think MCS 013, that relation symmetric, asymmetric, transitive, and these are some of the relation which you should know about the part, and this you must have discussed in your that MCS 013. If not, then this is the core concept and this is the core difference in between the two. So let me come to the languages again. So please show the slide. So there are again data control languages, because when you are going to incorporate the transactions, the data is to be controlled. There are two types of controls, the access control and the transaction control. There are general commands which are used for data access, that is your grant and revoke, and there is a concept of transaction control. The commands are commit and rollback. Whereas data storage definition language, the storage part, this represents the internal mechanism, that how the data, say you are using the roll number. The roll number is to be of integer type, and so integer type. So how the integer, float, and all those things are to be updated into the memory, how they are to be stored, what should be the memory size, they are all taken care by this data storage definition language. So so there are let me come to an important part, that in order to model a relational database, there are two mechanisms which are available nowadays, the entity relationship diagram as well as UML diagrams or object-oriented diagrams. And the difference is that entity relationship diagram are specifically for database designing, where the UML diagram can be used for both programming as well as, or the object-oriented diagram can be used for both programming as well as database designing. This is an important part to be observed. Secondly, in an entity relationship diagram, one should understand what are the various type of entities. This is an important part because when you are drafting your project, when you are starting your project, it is very difficult for you people that how to identify the entities and what are different type of entities. Actually, entities are classified as weak entity, strong entity, abstract entity, and concrete entity. What do you mean by weak entity and strong entity? Say a weak entity is an entity which is dependent on some another entity, and the entity on which it is dependent is a strong entity. Say I want to identify a person is driving a car, and he is a driver if he is having a license. That means his entity of being a driver is identified, that whether he is possessing the license to drive the same or not. That means the driver, the entity driver, is dependent upon the license. So license is a strong entity, whereas the driver is a weak entity. At the same time, the abstract and the concrete entity, abstract entities are the entities which cannot be physically identified, likewise your numbers, characters. So, and the concrete entities are the entities which can be identified, like your person name and instruments and all that stuff. So further, the attributes are also to be recognized. There are simple attributes, composite attributes, and simple attributes are in fact attributes which are non-divisible. Likewise your phone number, or likewise simply a number. Or a composite attribute, likewise your address, the house number and street number and country and all that stuff. And single valued attributes, likewise your age of person, and these are some of the attributes. Further, relation, this is already discussed with you. And yes, in order to have a mapping in between two or more sets, the concept of key arrives, which is very important to understand, because the database the definition starts central pool of data that can be shared, and not to have sharing, we need to identify what are various type of keys. A key is in fact an attribute, it is a common attribute in between the entity sets, and there are different type of keys which can be classified as candidate, primary, alternate, super, foreign, secondary, and composite. The things appear to be quite mixing, but it can be well understood by a simple example. Say you are going to purchase a car, or say you are going to purchase an automobile. What do you do? Well, at that very instance of time, the RC number, the registration number is not available. And what happened, that a person notes the engine number, notes the chassis number, forward your application to the authority, and the authority issues a new number to you. Now the RC which you are having has your name, owner name, the model, the brand of bike which you are having, the color, engine number, chassis number, weight, and all that stuff. These are in fact the attributes which are proposing as if they can identify the vehicle distinctly. But out of these, there are only, that means all of them are proposing as if they are the candidate keys, but only 2 or 3 of them can require to identify the things, likewise your engine number, chassis number, and RC number. So these 3 are in fact the potential candidates which can distinctly identify the key, and so out of them you can choose one of them as the primary key and other as the alternate key. Say for road tax authority, for RC, your RC number is your primary key. So far as the company is concerned, whose bike you are having, the engine number and chassis number combination, that is this composite key, will serve as the distinct identification. Secondly, the secondary key concept is about the attribute, which in fact not being distinctly identifying the data, but still playing an important role. Say you are going to identify a vehicle, that how many black color cars are available on the road. So color is not distinctly identifying the vehicle, but still it is playing a major role in order to identify the data. Such attributes are in fact not the secondary keys. So I hope you got a flavor about the database management system in this session, that what are the discrete components, what is the concept of relation, why set theory, probability and all those discrete components are being taught, and what is their role in computer science, and how they strengthen your understanding of computer science. Because not knowing these concepts at higher levels, you may face some problem. I hope this session might have fulfilled your most of the queries. Thank you.